article. And as it is a bond article, a 3/5 vote is required to pass. Do I have a second?
I second this.
And now there'll be a presentation by the school board.
That would be me. Before we talk about just this bond, I wanted to share the 4 items we're discussing tonight. So everybody should have a copy of the presentation. It might be hard to see up on the screen. So if you have it, you can look at it. The siding, as a summary, is going to add 4 cents to the tax bill. What that represents is for a $250,000 property, that'd be $10. $500,000 property would be $20. $750,000 property would be $30. So that's what this siding is, and we'll get to that in a minute. The next one is our collective bargaining agreement. This is also going to add to the tax bill 12 cents, $30, $60, $90 for those 3 types of properties. Then we have our operating budget, which has a decrease of 24 cents to the tax bill. So this decrease would be $60, $120, and $180. And then finally, if you add all these together, so the 3 that we're talking about, the net of this would be an 8%, or not 8%, 8 cent decrease to the tax bill, which would be $20, $40, $60. So before we got into just this bond, I wanted people to have a picture of, if everything passed, what it would look like to the tax bill, which would be an 8 cent decrease. So this was the bond that Tim just motioned on. It's in the warrants that you guys have as your handouts. So why do we need to do this? This is the original siding from 1974. If you walked around the building, you'd see rot, you'd see holes, you'll see gaps. The last time the building was painted was in 2013, and we should be painting it every 5 to 6 years. And we delayed painting it because we were going to reside it. So 2018 came and we're gonna reside it, and we didn't, because it wasn't we had other things we had to deal with at the time. 2019 came and we we're gonna reside it again, and we didn't. And then 2020 came and we got COVID. And if you guys, if you remember, our school population went from a low of 16 students to a high of 63 students that year. So that was not the year to propose residing the building. So we've been pushing this off for the last 5 years. So what we're proposing now is no longer pushing this off, because we're worried that we've done damage to the underlying sheathing. And if we delay this anymore, more damage is going to be done. So we're planning on making a 20-year bond for this. The idea around this is this siding should last for 20 years or more. So let the people that are using the building over the next 20 years pay for the siding, since they'll be using it over that period of time. $15,000, as mentioned, would be part of the upcoming tax bill. People had questions as to, this is a large amount of money. The building is 21,000 square feet. And so the current price is $22,000 per square foot. So just the siding, no painting, is $462,000. The remaining is to paint and some contingency, because we think we're going to find rot under the siding that we have to deal with. We don't know how much that's going to be, but we want to make sure that if we do find rot under the siding, that we have enough funds to cover that. Again, as mentioned before, this adds 4% to the tax rate for this year, and likely will continue that 4% for the following years. $10, $20, $30 for those properties as valued as $250,000, $500,000, $750,000.
4% or 4 cents?
4 cents, sorry. 4 cents to the tax bill, not 4%, 4 cents. So that's the end of this presentation. I'm just putting up the warrant article notes here again to signify that this is what we're talking about, is this warrant article. Thank you.
Anybody else, Mike? Maybe on the one.
That's it.
Okay, so now we'll take questions from the floor. Any discussion? You want to come up, Mr. Wenger, to the mic, please? Say your name.
Mike, is the 21,000 square feet the entire structure that's here?
That's correct.
Not a town portion. I
Well,
always get confused.
So if I can interject, we used to separate the building a long time ago, 10 years ago, and we used to do exchanges for staffing and electrical, and it was really unclear what it cost to run this building. Now the building cost is completely in the school budget.
Excellent, thank you.
Margaret?
Couple of questions. Margaret Turner, 17 River Road. What kind of siding is it going to be? And are you keeping the red color?
I don't know what kind of siding. I would imagine it's going to be cedar. I don't know. Does anybody have? Go ahead.
Dan?
I believe you have a town ordinance that requires wood siding.
Right, it will be wood
and
for
it's gotta
sure.
Be maintained.
And the school building will be red. We've not discussed anything different.
Any more questions? Come on up. Don't be shy. It's what we're here for.
Bill Spence, I live on Snows Mountain Road. 585 is a lot of money.
Mhm.
How did you arrive at that number? And how many bids were there for this work?
So at this point, we have not put this out to bid yet. We work with the facilitator from the SAU who does all the building management for all the buildings and schools in the SAU. So this was from his recommendation. We have the numbers again. If I go back to that slide. Ryan, can you put the slides up? So we have 21,000 square feet of siding. And the current rate is $22,000 per square foot. And that's when we were doing this, when I,
$20
$22 per square foot,
per square foot.
$22 per square foot. When I talked to John last week about this, John Francis is the built facility coordinator. He said that's the rate when he did this. He thinks that rate's actually going to go up because of inflation and what's happening right now. So we're a little bit concerned about that as well. So that gets us to $462,000, and we didn't do anything at this point. We haven't painted. We haven't seen if this rot. We agree this is a large sum of money, and we have to make sure that we have enough money to cover this project. And if we have any surplus, the surplus will go back to the town to lower the tax rate.
So we'll see what happens when it goes out to bid.
Yes.
Presumably, we have a few contractors who want.
Right. He has experience with this. John Francis is the one that manages the project that go on with the school. So we have oversight over it, but he's the one that does the management of it. So we're trusting that he has got contractors that are willing to commit to this price. That's Nancy.
Nancy, Knight?
So the town actually doesn't follow any town ordinances. I'm not familiar with that ordinance about having to do siding.
Not cedar. I think the notion was the town ordinance is no vinyl. It has to be wood siding.
Oh, no vinyl. No vinyl's fine. But I was hoping that we could think of perhaps using more modern siding. I mean, my house has both cedar and cement board. And the cement board that we installed in 2009 hasn't needed to be touched. It looks as new as the day we installed it, whereas the cedar has needed work like every 3 years.
Mhm.
So I think we should consider using something that needs a lot less work. Wood really doesn't do a great job on the outside.
We'll take that into consideration and see if we can keep it within budget.
Yeah, and there may be new kinds of vinyl. I don't know, but anyways, we don't have to follow any rule. We can be creative.
Any more questions? No questions from the floor? Okay, so we'll bring it to a vote. So you have your first slip, that's your ballot. So you need to circle yes or no, the yellow one, only the yellow one. Yes or no, you approve the $585,000 bond that we're going to look for to do the siding. And please walk it up right now and put it in the bond ballot box, which is not me. And I'll start the clock now. 6:15. Don't take that. It's the only one I have. Just circle your thing. Yeah. Do mine too. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Gotta go to 7:15. Yeah, what an orderly crew. Looks like everybody's done voting. Wow. Okay, so by law, the voting has to remain open for a bond article for an hour. So we can't start counting until 7:15, but we can move on with the meeting. So may I have a motion for Article 3?
It's you, Mike.
I move the school district vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Waterville Valley School Board and the Waterville Valley Teachers Association, which calls for the following increased salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels. Fiscal year 2022 to 2023, $40,240. Fiscal year 2023 to 2024, $34,216. 2024 to 2025, $34,230. And further to raise and appropriate $40,240 for the current fiscal year, such sum to represent the additional cost attributable to the increased salaries and benefits required by the agreement over those that would be paid at the current staff levels.
Thank you, Mike. The school board recommends this article unanimously. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. At this point, there'll be a presentation.
Yeah. Something quick.
We got an hour.
I know. We have plenty of time, but I only have, I think, one slide in this. So why are we doing this? Every 2 to 3 years, we have to negotiate with the teachers union. So we did 2 years last time. We're doing 3 years this time, so we don't have to revisit this all the time. But one of the things that comes up over and over again is that the entry pay is one of the lowest in the SAU. So the SAU is made up of 7 schools around Waterville Valley, and we're at the bottom of that ranking at the entry level. All the schools adjust their school matrices regularly. We have pushed that off again for a number of years, so we're now in catch-up mode. So all we did this year is just change the percentage of the matrix adjustment for this year. That's all we did. So we didn't change the matrix at all to change the number of years on it, or or any other aspect of it. We just did a salary increase across the board, starting with the base salary, and then it moves its way up the matrix. Again, this adds 12 cents to the tax rate, which going through those 3 properties, 250,000, 500,000, and 750,000 would be a $30 increase, a $60 increase, or a $90 increase. And that's the whole presentation I have.
Thank you. So now we'll open it to the floor for questions. Anybody have any questions about the teachers' collective bargaining agreement? Margaret Turner.
Back again.
Good.
17 River Road. Just wanted to know what the percentage increase is, because I know from looking at the town thing for years, we haven't had to do a whole lot in the rate of increase, but the cost of living has gone up tremendously, and I want to make sure our teachers are keeping pace.
No, we appreciate that. Do I remember it's 4%, 3%, 3%?
It is 7. Then it was, the first year was 7%.
Is that what it
then
was?
it's 3 3. Which is actually, we think very.
Any other questions from the floor? So let's bring this to a vote. All those in favor of the teachers' collective bargaining agreement, please raise your card. And all those opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Article 4, the goodie.
I move that the school district vote to raise and appropriate the amount of $1,785,640 for the support of the schools, for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment of the statutory obligations of the district. This article does not include any appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately.
And the school board does recommend this article unanimously. And when you say that it does not contain appropriations contained in individual articles such as the bond,
Such as the bond or the collective bargaining that we just
yeah,
talked through.
thank you for that clarification. Do I have a second?
I second.
At this time, there'll be a presentation by the school board.
Okay. We have plenty of time. So this again is the warrant article that we're talking about here. Here's the historical attendance. So you can see when I talked about that COVID year, we had 17 students and we were budgeted for 17 students. We jumped up to 63 students. We were all concerned that those 63 students were only going to be a 1 year and leave the valley, and that did not happen. So some left the valley, but this year our attendance is 53. So just to make sure everybody's aware, the school budget includes the maintenance of the school property, the entire building, which includes this gymnasium floor, this gymnasium period, this and the electrical and everything on the rec side of the building. It's personnel to educate the K through 8 grades that are educated here in Waterloo Valley, but we also pay tuition to Plymouth Regional High School. So any student that goes to Plymouth Regional High School is part of the school budget as well. We have done this for the last 10 years, have explored different scenarios for how to deal with this budget. Scenario 1 is what we just described. We educate K through 8 in Waterloo Valley in this building, and then we tuition in 9 through 12 down at Plymouth, and that's the status quo. But we've been asked, and we do look at the scenario all the time, is let's close the school, repurpose this building for something else. And so we will end up tuitioning students. With our demographic, the only school that could take those tuition students would be Plymouth. So Campton and Thornton would not be able to accommodate getting this influx of 63 students or 55 students at a, as a unit. So Plymouth would be the place that could accommodate that. So as we talk about the status quo, the state requires us to raise a minimum amount of money. This amount of money has declined year over year over year. When I first became school board chair 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, the state was having us raise almost $900,000. Now the state's requiring us to raise $427,000. So $471,000. So this number has been declining over the years. This is what the state determines that we need to raise as a minimum to educate the students in Waterloo Valley. So we submit our budget. If our budget is less than $427,000, the state keeps the remainder. If our budget's more than the $427,000, they return that $427,471 back to us. It's just all on paper, and then we have to make up the difference. So when you look on your tax bill, you'll see 2 school funding lines. There's the state school funding line and the local school funding line. That state school funding line has been in decline year over year over year. However, the budget has not changed dramatically, with the exception of the COVID year over year. So what has to happen is the local line has to go up. If the budget's always $1 million And the state's requiring us to raise $800,000 one year, and they're requiring us to raise $600,000 the following year. That state line's gonna go down, but the local line's gonna go up. The budget's still $1 million. It hasn't changed. So I just want to make sure people understand that. And every year, the state comes up with a new number. So the budget as presented is $1,765,644. This is an increase of $97,079 over the previous budget, which is a 5.7% increase. But the story doesn't stop there. You'll see how, as I told you, we're dropping 12 cents from this. So how do we get there?
Isn't it 1785, 644?
It might be. I
Yeah.
might have a misprint on the
Yeah.
slides. So the other scenario is to close the school. So if we look at this scenario, we have some fixed costs. The fixed costs are SAU services. We still have to be a contributing member to their SAU unit here. School board expenses don't change because we still need to have a school board, but we now have to include busing because we need to bus students from Waterville Valley down to Plymouth. By law, we have to bus students K through 6, I think. Is that right?
K through 8.
K through 8. So by law, we have to bus students K through 8. 9 through 12, we don't need to bus. And then the building operations for this budget are $176,250. So this totals $321,933. Then we take this current census that we have today and tuition them to Plymouth. The tuition is $22,000 per student. So with 53 elementary students, that's $1,166,000. Our special ed costs aren't going to change. That's $131,686. And we still have the 6 high school students that we're already tuitioning down to Plymouth. So that's another $132,000, which includes special ed. So if you add all these costs up, this would cost $1,751,619 compared to our proposed budget was $1,785,644, which I'm told is not the right number.
No, that's right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, the decrease is $34,000. So I think everybody in this room, I hope, can see that it doesn't make sense for us to close the school and to tuition the students out of the valley to a half-an-hour drive down to Plymouth both ways. So let's go through the budget. If you want to follow along, you can follow along here, or this is all on the spreadsheet that was a handout. And the spreadsheet, we're looking at page 9, which is actually the top page. This is a functional sub. This is the subtotals for each functional unit, and all the backup is below it. But what I'm doing here is highlighting the significant changes. So regular education dropped by 27,764. And that's because we had a change in personnel. Special ed decreased by 82,355. We have no control over this. This is just student population. Co-curricular increased by 12,635. We had a soccer team for the first time last fall. We've had enough students to be able to field a soccer team, and the soccer team played on Packers Field. The other SAU schools came up and competed with them, and then they traveled down to the other SAU schools. So this is the first co-ed team, or first school team that we had in the history of Waterville Valley. So it was kind of fun. Health and guidance services, I combined those together. They end up decreasing by only $191. What we try to do is anything that's a significant change, $1,000 or more, we call out and say, why was that a change? So health services and guidances together were a change that was over $1,000. Each one was positive, one was negative, so hence the net ended up being just 191. Psychological services, change in demographics. Speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, again, change in demographics, so we have no real control over that. Improvement in instruction, it increased by 1,301. This is summer work and literacy team. School board services, we are budgeting some legal fees so we have 1,185. SAU services decreased 2,803. That's a change in personnel at the SAU office. The principal Principal's office had an increase, and this is a change in demographics because it's the principal's office is not only the principal, but also the secretary. Building services is decreasing 6,863. We're not buying the capital expense that we thought we were going to buy, which is new PCs. We're going to let them go for another year. And transportation had a decrease, again, change in demographics, 10,251. And then here's a big item here, building improvements, the fire alarm and lights. And I've got a slide to talk to this. This is a $147,499 increase. So this is where the majority of the increase is in the school budget, is in the building improvements. And then health insurance had an increase. We really can't change that. Change in personnel and health insurance, as you know, has been increasing over time. So combined, this is that $97,079 increase. The majority of that is in that building improvements, which we'll talk about next. So the fire alarm system, the fire detectors are old. They're from 1990 or older, and some are actually from when the building was built in 1974. So it's $65,000 to replace this. And one of the benefits with this replacement is when there's a fault in the system, we'll know exactly where in the building that fault is, whether it's a false alarm or it's a fire or you know, whatever it is. There'll be a panel that'll tell you exactly where it is. Right now, we don't have that. So right now, if there's a alarm that goes on in the system, the firemen have to go and fire personnel have to go and search the building to find out what's going on. The lighting, we're going to upgrade the lights to LED lights to both extend the life of the lights, but also lower our energy costs. That's $72,500. And then the architectural services are $10,000 for the siding. So we just can't put the siding on. We need to have some planning to get the siding on. So $10,000 is for architectural services for the planning of the siding project. So that's a big increase. We're back to this $97,079. So how are we lowering the tax rate by doing this? There's a one-time adequacy grant that we are entitled to this coming year. That's $163,342. We're not going to see this again. We haven't seen it in the past, but we are lucky to be able to get this grant from the state of New Hampshire this one time. Because of this grant, this is where we can count on this revenue to offset the expenses that we're incurring here. The revenues, we have tuition for $16,000. We typically get REAP money from the National Forest, because we're in the National Forest, so from the federal government. That's typically about $17,000. So we're budgeting $17,500 for that. And there's just some other revenues that come in that add up to $8,250. That's our estimate for these. So you take that adequacy grant, and you take our building improvements that we're talking about with fire and lighting, and now they offset each other to the point that we're removing 24 cents from the tax bill. So for those properties, 250,000, 500,000, 750,000, we have a $60, $120, and a $180 increase to the tax bill. So we worked with Dan Rosner, our business analyst, a lot. Knowing that this adequacy grant came in, gave us flexibility. So we had a whole bunch of scenarios that we looked at. This is the one that made sense. Do the siding, get the architectural services for the siding, do the fire alarm and lighting. That's going to save us money in the long term and help the fire department and keep the building safe. Now is the time to do it because we had those extra funds coming in. These projects have to get done at some point, and you know, we believe now is the time because of those revenues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to the floor for questions. Come on, people. That's right, Margaret. We're talking about $2 million here. Don't
No,
you have something to
1.7.
say?
Margaret Turner, 17 River Road. Just want to know what you think is going on with the school population going forward, and can you just explain to folks, like, if you budget for 53 and there are 45, what happens to the extra you have in the budget for that?
Sure. I don't know what the future is going to hold. We're always surprised. I am happy and impressed that we went from 63 students to 53 students. We all thought we were going to go from 63 students back down to 20 or 30. So that just tells you that a testament to the environment that we have here. Families moved up. They thought they were moving up for a year. The kids thrived in this environment, and the families are staying, and we're thrilled to have that happen. So I think that the 53 kids we have now are now long-term. I don't imagine that a significant number of them are going to leave. So I don't think our numbers are going to drop down, back down to the 30s at any point in the future. However, if they do, we will deal with that, and that dealing with that would there's a couple things in play here. One is we have COVID protocols that we have to deal with. The students have to be far enough apart so they are safe. They got to be at least 3 feet apart. Without COVID, we don't have that requirement. They can be sharing desks and being closer. We are using a lot of extra space for education. We're using the multipurpose room. We're using the cafeteria. We're using the former art room. So those are individual spaces to educate the students that require personnel to be there for that. If we can combine things down, we don't need that level of personnel anymore. So if it does drop down, that we can not have the COVID restrictions of distance, social distancing between the kids, get the school to be 45 students, which is what it's designed for, 15 students in each classroom area, then we won't need to be using the multipurpose room. We won't need to be using the cafeteria and the art room. So then we can lessen the personnel. We lessen the personnel, then we have budget available that at the end of the school year, that budget now goes back into the bank, and it lowers the tax rate. Another thing we never know, and I think, Margaret, you were kind of alluding to this, is what happens if people come into the town. If people come into the town and they have high school students, we kind of get in trouble because we're tuitioning high school students. So our budget is based on the high school students that we know. It could come up that we have a family that comes in that has 2 high school students and they're going to Plymouth and they're $22,000 each. So we have to accommodate for that. We do, for the first time, have the ability to have a capital fund. We have a fund that we funded last year for the first time. So it's a contingency fund. So in the event that we end up going over the budget because of unforeseen high school students, we can draw from that and not get in trouble. So that's a change that was voted on last year and approved last year. So we do have some money available to us to deal with some things that could be unforeseen. Is that?
You also have to remember, as you know, I talk to Mark periodically, I'm sure you know better than I do. Our resident population hasn't dropped
No.
this year at all.
Yeah.
We're up to 650, 645, something like that. Based on that, we have to continue with what we have.
Right. I don't have numbers on it. Lindsay, do you know any?
The last time I spoke to Mark, who is on the board of the Ray Center, there are 8 kids at the nursery school.
That's
at the Ray
great.
Center. He seemed to tell me that a minimum of 6 of those, minimum, which is I guess the same thing you heard, a minimum of 6 will be coming into kindergarten, with more that we may or may not get, which also goes into, as you know, I mean, you see the same things I do.
Right. So that's good news. This is the healthiest the school has been over the past 10 years. So I hope it'll continue at this level.
More questions from the floor?
I'll ask the same kind of question again, which is, it's a lot of money for lights and fire alarms.
Yeah.
We don't know how much these things cost.
Right, we don't.
Have you gone out to competitive bids? Have other contractors told you? That is, it would be helpful if
Yeah.
you told the voters how you arrive at these numbers.
Yeah, so I have no choice but to answer this the same way I answered the last one, which is, we're not contractors. We're not the ones going out to bids. We pay the SAU, that's in their fee for them to go do this for us. So John Francis, the guy that facilitates all the buildings, he's the one that goes out and has all the relationships with all the contractors, and he comes up with these numbers. These numbers are not going to be exact numbers. He tends to be conservative, meaning that we're budgeting the $147,499. That's what he's budgeting. Most likely it's going to come in a little bit less than that, because we want to have a little bit of slush for contingencies in case something happens. But we're trusting the SAU that they're the ones that are getting competitive bids on this, and we can't get the bids on this until we can allocate the funds, right? So he has the relationships with all the other contractors for all the other schools. So he's talking to them and he says, this is what we want to do. What's it look like it's going to cost? And that's how he comes up with the numbers.
Anybody else? Well, I think we'll bring it to a vote then. So all those in favor of approving the operating budget for the Waterville Valley Elementary School, please raise your voter card. And may I see all those opposed? Carries. We have a half an hour left on the clock for the bond article before we can close the meeting. But I would like to recognize Tim for a motion.
I move to limit reconsideration of all votes taken to this point.
Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Can we vote on restricting reconsideration? All those in favor? And all those opposed? Carries. And now I'll ask if there's any other business to come before this meeting. I believe there is. I'd like to recognize Wendy Rathgeber for the planning board. Want to come up front, Wendy?
Do you want a microphone here, or you want to go there? Okay.
Thank you, Marilyn. Hi, everyone. My name is Wendy Rathgeber. Just want to speak briefly as my capacity as Planning Board Chair. This year, we are looking at a couple of vacancies in our Planning Board. And I wanted to take a minute this evening, because usually the agenda is a little bit lighter tonight than tomorrow. And also, because I wanted to try to target some of the community of parents of some of the younger families in town. We have a really robust planning board right now, but we are lacking some of the voices, some of the participation from the younger families, and that's a perspective that's really valuable. So I just thought I'd take a minute tonight to encourage everyone to think about participating. Planning board meets regular meetings once monthly, second Thursdays, 8 a.m. You have plenty of time to get the kiddos into school. If you need any other, if you have any interest, feel free to reach out to me or any members of the select board. The town administration will be happy to answer questions and point you in the right direction as well. If the planning board's not your thing, there are other vacancies in town budgets, town committees and boards. So feel free to reach out and find other ways to get involved as well. That's all. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Wendy. So true. If If not, the planning board choose from one of the others. So now I would suggest that everybody get up and stretch or leave if you're not concerned about the results of the bond article, because we've come to the end of the business meeting and we're just running the clock down until we can start counting the bonds. And I can't technically adjourn the meeting until we have the result, until we stop the clock on the bond article.
Thank you, everyone.